Hello again, everyone. You're joining us for another episode of Executive Platform's Blueprint podcast series. My name is Jeff Mix. I'm head of content and research. My guest today is Bob Honer of Anaplan. Those of you who follow the channel may remember I spoke with Bob recently at a manufacturing event we put on. Today we are at a pharma manufacturing event, which is specific to industries in the life sciences. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Bob, thank you so much for joining me today.
Likewise, Jeff. Good to see you again.
Why don't we start off by talking about some of the unique challenges the life sciences are facing when it comes to their supply chains. It's an exciting time for the industry, but things are in motion. Why don't we start with what you're hearing?
That's spot on. And you know what? Why don't we just take a step back? Instead of beginning with the challenges, let's talk about what's been accomplished. You know, like you said, what an amazing time. If we look at what took place with COVID, this business developed a new vaccine within months. If you think back to polio, it took decades to develop the polio vaccine. And then getting that vaccine in billions of patients, nothing like that's been done in the past. But with that comes many, many challenges. And you know, one thing that has amazed me is in talking to companies this week, we talk about those amazing advancements on the science side. On the execution side, the challenges go back to the basics. If you could help me with a demand plan, if you could help give me visibility both within my company and outside my company, you know, things that we talked about in CPG and in some of those businesses as being table stakes, still a fundamental challenge in life sciences.
Well, and the industry, as you say, it's rapidly maturing. New products are coming online all the time. A lot of the expertise in the industry is focusing on innovation, not on the table stakes of running a supply chain.
It's spot on. You know, we've got so much of that intellectual capital focused, as it should be, on the science side. But if we can't affect patient outcomes, the science is just academic.
Right. So I think this is about the time this is when we should start talking about connected supply chain planning, because one of the opportunities the industry faces is to get it right from the start. If they're building new procedures, why not start with something like connected supply chain planning?
Absolutely. And you know, in the past, we've talked about planning as being, focused on supply chain. What do I need to make and when? What's my demand going to be? How am I going to launch my new items? But one thing that we found is that a supply chain plan that's owned by the planning team and doesn't extend beyond that isn't as valuable. It's when we can open up those lines of communication and develop an end-to-end plan. You know, what we often like to think of as one plan that can align not only the company, but the extended supply chain. That's the value.
So for people in the life sciences who may not have seen the earlier episode with the manufacturing audience, how would we define a connected supply chain?
Good question. So the genesis of supply chain planning has always been that balancing demand and supply planning. And if we think about the S&OP days, if you will, that always was a monthly cadence. And monthly planning made sense back then because that's what the technology facilitated. You know, a monthly plan was about what we could accomplish. We don't have those technical limitations today, obviously. Today, no business is planning on a monthly cadence. No business is planning on a weekly cadence. You know, these demand and supply balances happen multiple times a day. And that planning capability is the foundation of connected planning. But then that plan doesn't just live within supply chain. We extend that to finance. We extend that to sales. We extend that even outside the walls of the company. And that's the value of a connected plan as opposed to an S&OP plan, a supply chain plan, and so on.
And I can see that being a tremendous idea for life sciences specifically to look at. Pharmaceutical manufacturers today are making products often, batch sizes of one. They have one patient. They're doing cell and gene therapies where it's theirs. So a new supply chain philosophy to be able to service individuals or small groups of people, small batches, and the orders are coming in at any rhythm. It doesn't have to be a monthly cadence. It could be, one day you have a small batch order and a very large batch comes in the next week, and you need to be able to scale and communicate that.
You've hit the nail on the head. We talked about that batch of one and also a batch of 1 million plus doses. And connected planning can scale to both of those.
So, in terms of a pharmaceutical manufacturer who is hearing this and probably thinking, well, where do I fit into that? I mean, there's the forecasting guy, there's the finance guy. I'm in the manufacturing side. How am I part of a connected supply chain?
Yeah. So, when we get down to the actual level of having to make the medication, if you will, it all depends on having an up-to-date plan. And when we connect that planning to execution, that's the place that we can affect patient outcomes. So it's on that plant plan that's going to allow me to take the science that we've developed and to get it to the patient.
As much as we talk about the fast pace of things and how innovation is really driving the industry right now, it's also worth talking about this is a well-regulated space. People believe in doing things the right way, in an exacting way. I wonder how that fits into a connected supply chain mentality.
It is quite a juxtaposition, isn't it, between the fast pace of the science and then the fact that we have all kinds of, not just legislation, but just ways of doing things that we need to abide by. So what we've been seeing best-in-class companies doing is taking all of that knowledge, but then building on it and being able to flex to the nuances within both life sciences, but within all of these new technologies in this fast pace of change.
Now, what makes Anaplan a leader in this space?
So I think most people have always known Anaplan as being a flexible system. If you could do it in Excel, you could do it in Anaplan has always been kind of the mentality. What we've done lately is said, you know what, we've been doing this quite a while and now we've got lots of use cases in supply chain specifically, and so we've taken those use cases and developed out-of-the-box apps. So essentially taking all of those lessons that we've gotten and building those into building blocks, if you will, that can then be implemented quickly and then being cognizant of the fact, though, that out of the box, nobody has an out-of-the-box business. Mm-hmm. Being able to then flex those apps and be able to adapt to the nuances, specifically within life science, has been quite a capable solution.
I wonder if we can talk about the change management aspect of this all. I think when new tools are introduced, they need to solve something in the business. What does this app offer manufacturers that they were struggling with before?
Yeah, we always focus on the technology, but one thing we found is that the change management is always the long pole in the tent. And what the apps do is they give us a foundation, a best-in-class foundation to build on. But to alleviate that change management aspect, we want to minimize change. And so one of the things that Anaplan has always been excellent at is allowing the tool to flex to the way the business is done, as opposed to making the business flex to the tool. So when we implement these apps, they become the baseline, but then we can modify that to be, in many cases, emulating the way people have been used to using maybe the Excel sheets, the tools that they use today. And that doesn't mean that we stay in the past. It doesn't mean that we don't enable the new capability. It just means we meet people in a place that they happen to be living today.
And then the app is going to connect the data of a manufacturer to the finance department, to the supply chain as a whole, up and down the value chain. The idea is it's one source of data that is going everywhere.
That's exactly it. Instead of having people living in Excel sheets and emails and offline data, we have not just the company, but the whole supply chain aligned on one plan. And the place that becomes especially meaningful is when we talk about the what ifs. One thing that's come up again and again this week is that the only thing constant is change. And I know that's cliche, but it's cliche because, well, it happens, And so as we want to simulate those changes, those potential changes, it allows that whole value chain to be on the same page.
In the life sciences right now, I think there's also the idea of, they're going to embrace a technological solution if there is one, but they're always worried about, is it going to play nice with the other systems? How long is it going to take? Is this going to be resource intensive or time intensive getting it up and running? What would you say to some of those concerns?
Yeah, well, one, I would say it's valid. As a field, any type of supply chain system has typically been seen as a heavy lift. I would say that especially with the app capability and with the Anaplan backend technology, that lift is lessened significantly. So when we talk about a supply chain implementation in life sciences, be it demand planning, be it supply planning, we'd be aiming at 6 to 8 week wins. We'd be looking at that type of timeline to begin seeing benefit out of these tools.
Another piece that I want to talk about whenever we're talking about a new tool or a technology is the people using it, because this is going to change their day-to-day a little bit. Can we talk about what this tool is going to free them up to do more or allow them to do better? How does their day-to-day change after they've got this up and running?
Hopefully in a positive way. That's always the goal. And to that end, what we see tools like this doing is doing the manual activity, doing the chasing of the data, the cleansing of the data, all of the things leading up to that plan. And with that type of activity out of the way, it opens up people to be able to use that human intelligence to act on that data, to make decisions based on that data, and to focus on the places that obviously humans do best.
Bob, we've touched on a few things over the course of this conversation. If we wanted to pick out some key takeaways you want people to think about a little further, what would you want to underline for them?
Well, again, I'd just like to highlight the amazing advancements that have been taking place in life sciences, and then just call out that even with those advancements, it's all about patient outcomes, and the best way to see that we get those patient outcomes is to be able to execute, to be able to act on that science.
I imagine there are listeners who are going through this and saying, well, how would it apply to my business? So, for people who do want to learn more, ask a few questions of their own, what is the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, we'd love to talk to them. And the easiest way to do that would be just on the website, anaplan.com.
Well, I encourage everyone to visit that website. And all I can say is, Bob, it is always a pleasure chatting with you.
Likewise, Jeff. Thank you.
You've been listening to another episode of Executive Platform's Blueprint Podcast Series. I've been Jeff Mix. Let's do it again soon.